Hello, everyone. Welcome to Brownish Parenting with Dr. Amita on Ruckus Avenue Radio. This show unveils modern Desi parenting topics and explores the latest research for raising our bicultural children. Last week, we dived into South Asian Americans and the stigmatized topic of divorce. We discussed the ways we want to talk about marriage and divorce with our kids so they have realistic expectations about a marriage and that they know that they have options if they want a divorce. We also explored the 7 stages of marriage to gain more perspective on the realistic ways we can view marriage and all that it entails. So, listen to that episode if you want to find out more. In this episode, we want to provide support to South Asian American parents who are divorced. First, we're going to talk about how South Asian American parents communicate with their children in general, because communication is going to be key. Then we will explore parenting tips to think about when parents decide to tell their children about a divorce. We also want to discuss ways in which divorced parents can co-parent without letting their issues get in the way of raising their children. Once a couple gets divorced, we know that they're in a post-divorce co-parenting situation typically. And so if they want joint custody, they have to live near each other. They're going to be co-parenting together. Now, this is typically someone you just can't stand. There's a lot of emotion there, anger, resentment. And so it can be very tricky. But there are ways it can be done if both parents agree to keep their children's best interests and needs in mind. South Asian Americans do value their families. They want to be a part of their children's lives. And so after a divorce, they're trying to navigate ways to be involved with their kids and to connect with them. So during this time, they're also simultaneously navigating the stereotypes that are in our community because they are divorced. And oftentimes they get labeled as maybe being selfish for prioritizing their own needs over their children's needs. They may hear comments like they should have waited until the children left the house. These judgmental comments really get to me because they don't understand the weight people are carrying if a mom or dad is struggling in their relationship. They may be having mental health issues due to their marriage. This is going to lead them to not be present with their children or provide them with that responsive style of care. Also, if there's high conflict in a household on a daily basis, this is what leads children to have negative, adverse outcomes in life. So today's episode is going to be about changing that narrative and showcasing the ways in which South Asian Americans can co-parent and how they can serve as models in our society for how to live between the hyphens of being South Asian and American by being true to themselves, their values, their beliefs, and how they're going through a divorce and figuring out how to meet their needs and the needs of their children. Today, we're going to explore that post-divorce co-parenting transition and how parents can, again, help their children make sense of the divorce. The magazine outlet SEMA featured a story called Compassionate Divorce in 2020, which highlighted how divorce doula Farhana Hussein helps South Asian women going through a divorce. She has experienced divorce herself, and she felt like Caucasian therapists didn't quite understand that it wasn't as simply as you need to live your own life, do things your way, because South Asian American women were really, they were thinking about their families. It was a huge part of their identity. And so first, she said that women often need to grieve that relationship because it's the death of a relationship you thought would last forever. And then she works with her clients to unlearn old scripts, like you are a failure if you get a divorce, and to learn more up-to-date scripts that help them feel safe and to grow. To do this, she states that you don't need to tell your families everything because they may push their advice, which may not be in your best interest. So you want to embrace growth and well-being by first journaling and writing to reflect on your choices and the decisions that you're making. Through this process, as parents are getting divorced, children are getting to see how their parents are navigating this difficult time in their lives. They're regulating these difficult and scary emotions for themselves. And it makes their parents more human. And children feel better knowing that everyone goes through tough times, but they also see the resiliency that their parents are showing them, and they're learning ways to cope and heal. And I love this quote by Hussein, who states, "The ending of a relationship can be the beginning of radical self-acceptance." Another quote, "They all begin to understand how to find that inner peace, how to be their own version of a good daughter or a good mother. They realize they can still be that good daughter, that good mother. They can still be that person." So this leads me to address the question with you all today. When should parents tell their children about a divorce? What should they tell them? Why is it happening? How should we approach the situation? Let's pause for a break, and when we come back, we are going to talk to our guest, Simi Markar, a licensed marriage and family therapist and the founder of Mindset Consulting Group, more about her experiences as a South Asian American and what led her to a career in strengthening relationships. Welcome back. We left off talking about how to navigate family relationships when you're going through a divorce. I am super excited to have Simi Markar here. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist that has been working in the Bay Area for the past 20 plus years. She is the founder and director of Mindset Counseling Group, which is a diverse team of therapists that supports clients through in-person and virtual appointments. The practice supports many clients, including local South Asian teens, adults, and their families. Mindset Counseling specializes in improving and strengthening relationships and reducing symptoms related to stress, anxiety, and depression. Simi is passionate about her work and enjoys helping clients to improve their emotional health. She also has a special focus on helping individuals cope with the divorce process and navigate co-parenting. Simi, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to join you.
Yeah. I would love for you to just tell us a little bit more about you and growing up in California and what that was like.
Sure. So I grew up actually in San Diego and my favorite place. I currently live in the Bay Area. So I grew up in a Punjabi Sikh family and had a lot of extended family around us. So that was really, really great to have that kind of support around my childhood, to have parents that are supportive, but also extended family like uncles and aunts. Um, Certain things that I noticed though about the family dynamics, if that's what we want to jump into, is
Yeah.
it's very interesting, even in today's dating world, that just because someone it has the same cultural background, let's say Punjabi, Sikh religious background, or matches, that is not enough to guarantee that the compatibility in the marriage is
Yeah.
going to work. And I feel like in the past, maybe that wasn't considered enough because it was more just the family backgrounds were matching, socioeconomic, status was matching, religion was matching. And so then they're like, yeah, this couple, these two can
Yeah.
get married and let's just go do that. And I think I grew up with some couples in my family that I'm like, they weren't so compatible in their personalities. One was very extroverted, very social. One was more intellectual, wanted a more quiet lifestyle. So that's really something that struck me when I was growing up. And it's something that I was paying attention to when I was also picking a partner. Um, so that's something I also really like to bring into my practice and talk about with people who are in, dating and thinking about getting married.
Yeah, I feel like that idea of like having it be perfect on paper, that bio data that gets circulated, to what you talked about, which is like, what about their personalities and temperament, and
Mhm.
are they outgoing? Do they like being social? And so that leads me to just wanting to find out a little bit more about how you then navigated to the career that you're in today, and if your background and your experiences played a role.
So yeah, I basically again grew up in San Diego, had a very large extended family. We had a big Sikh and Indian community down there. Um, and just started to notice as I got older, as a teenager, I was like, there's some marital things going on around. We went to the Gurdwara pretty frequently.
Yeah.
There would be like some parenting things, just things that I would pick up on, and I was noticing there wasn't a lot of talking about it or dialogue about it, or
Mhm.
and so at some point, I was like, I want to get more involved in this or see how to help our community and help, especially also the two generations. It's like the immigrant generation
Yes.
and the generation, I'm like first generation basically growing up here. So it's like
Yeah.
there's a gap in understanding of like how to navigate, culture in the US. And I feel like that was really spoke to me. I'm like, oh, I would love to work in this space and kind of maybe help bridge the gap a little bit, do, help with education for parents, and even children, like adjusting and coping. And
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that's so important. your parents were also open to you exploring different career options and opportunities? Because a lot of times South Asians will tell me they weren't able to first pursue a career in psychology
Well,
before.
initially, my dad did have concern. He was like, "How are you going to create a career out of this?"
Mhm.
Because it was new to him too, right? He's
Yeah,
like, he's an engineer, you
yeah,
know. And
yeah,
so in many of our South Asian families, it's like engineer, attorney, doctor. It's like, can you pick one of these like very stable,
yeah,
career
yeah,
path?
yeah,
And none of those were really speaking to me. And so I went to UCSD as an undergrad and I took my first psychology class and I was like, okay, this is totally speaking to me.
yeah,
Um, and then I went home and had it just because we have this open dialogue with my parents. So I could talk to my dad and
yeah.
say, hey, this is something I really want to explore. And he was supportive. He was like, go see what you can do. Where does this lead? What he was also like, think career also, right?
Yes,
He was kind of think
yes.
future security.
So you had that, like, yeah, that living between the hyphens is what I call it. The American side of, go pursue your dreams and everything that you want. And then the South Asian side, like, think about your career, think about furthering your education and all of that.
I think what was also really important, so I grew up in a family of four daughters, which is a little bit unusual. And so there's four girls in my family and my dad, both my parents, my mom and my dad really wanted us to be self-sufficient, like to be able to support ourselves and to be able to have careers and not be dependent on a partner. I think that was also pretty progressive of my family. They're like, there's no reason we're in the US. You can get an education, get a career, stand on your own 2 feet. And then if you want to get married, you don't need to get married to be dependent on someone financially. That's not
Mhm.
what they wanted for us. And so I feel like that was also very helpful to be like that encouragement and confidence building that like, hey, you can go do this and go support yourself, like figure out how to build a career. So
Yeah, awesome. Okay, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to address some of the common challenges parents may have when they're communicating with their children. Okay, welcome back. You're listening to Brownish Parenting with Dr. Mita on Ruckus Avenue Radio. Before we talk about the best practices for parents who are divorced, I want to just get into how to talk to children about divorce and in general, like what are some of the common challenges South Asian parents and families are having with communication?
it's a great topic. I'm so glad we're talking about this because this is showing up in my practice quite a bit.
Mhm.
We have quite a few teenagers that are coming in for support and counseling. And one of the big things that they bring to me is that they want to be able to talk to parents more.
Mhm.
And sometimes some of the barriers we're seeing is like, hey, mom's on the phone a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, oh, interesting. And they're like, I try to approach her and she's just busy. Like she's not giving the signal
Mhm.
that she's available, right? It's
Oh,
like either we're moving so quickly because the Bay Area and our lifestyles are so full, but we're not creating the space. And
mhm.
so I really need parents to think about if you're picking up your seventh grader from middle school that you're on time, you're relaxed, you're not on your phone, you're not on a call, you're
Yeah.
just I need this pleasant, calm environment. And the
Mhm.
kiddo may or may not speak because they've also been in a long school day. They're tired. They just need to crash in the car and get to the next thing or get home. But the parent, guys, we have to create the environment, like be calm, be relaxed. I have some kids, they say they get in the car and the parent just starts complaining about their day
Oh,
to the
wow.
kiddo. And I
Yeah.
said, oh, that's not great either.
Yeah.
um, because the parent thinks that like, oh, I'm creating conversation.
Uh,
You know, and I said,
it's not about the child. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not about the child. It's like, oh my gosh, I had such a crazy work day and I have this, I have a call in 20 minutes and this and this and this. And the child's like, I don't know how to even engage in this. And I'm kind of trying to check out because it's just too much.
And they have so much
Um,
going on in their lives.
I
Yeah.
know.
So imagine
So
adding that other layer on.
so I tell parents, I'm like, can we just be quiet in the car or calm or maybe a little bit of music is on and just be like, hey, I'm so happy to see you, or like, what was good in your day today, or what was your favorite class, or did you have fun at lunch, or try to find questions to
Yeah.
ask that are not just like, oh, did you have a good day? um, you know, do you feel hungry? Do you want to get a snack after? It's like, what do you feel like doing once we get home?
Hmm.
Um, just really trying to connect with the child. And
Yes.
some of our parents are struggling with this.
I can
So
see. Yeah. I wonder if it's for me, I know it took me a while to realize that silence was okay.
I think
So
I want to just reinforce what you just said. Silence is okay, guys.
yeah.
I just need the environment in the car or the home to be calm, relaxed, not chaotic,
Hmm.
and give the child a space to talk. And if they're tired, that's also okay. Like, sometimes if I picked you up from work after a long day and you don't want to talk, I'm not going to force you.
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
and oftentimes my boys are really tired and hungry after school. Like
Yeah.
they need to get home and kind of recharge.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
get that. And my boys have told me they appreciate that, like if dad and I are like on time, consistent, reliable, they're like, it's just too much if it's chaotic. Like we're trying, every once in a while we are, but late, but we're trying not to be late, trying to be on time, trying to be there, be like, we know you get out at this time. I will be there to pick you up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's really helpful. That really helps our kids with their mental health and like just well-being, because the consistency matters.
I love that consistency because I think there are times where, my kids know I'm definitely going to be more available. And it's interesting because when they're ready, they do open up. So like what you're saying, there's like this period where, yeah, after school, it's usually just they are just kind of winding down. They were just with a bunch of peers and they had to kind of show up and talk and be on with their teachers. So we're that safe space for them to just sort of have that silence and then, in the evenings, like my children know that I'm always going to be around. I'm thinking about their bedtimes and all of that. So, or even after school, like making their like snacks or helping them with that or just kind of being there around like after school time. But yeah, then they do open up, right? And do you feel like that's also something that you've seen in the practice
Yeah,
where, yeah.
I do. I do because for in our house we create the space. So,
Mhm.
husband and I are home from work and it's just the house is calm. We're not chaotic about dinner.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, sometimes behind the scenes, not towards the kids, right?
Yeah.
We as the parents are figuring it out, but we are trying to be like our house needs to be a calm, safe space so kids feel like they can breathe, relax. I don't want to create an environment where they're avoiding the parents or the house because it's too stressful. The parents are not getting along, so they're like really
Yeah.
trying to avoid us. Or mom's really stressed out on the phone all the time. So they're
Yeah.
like, they don't want to come towards that energy, right? Like that is stressful. And I really work with parents to say, hey, what are we doing to create this environment?
That is
And I think the
great.
phones, we need to put the phones.
Yes, yes. Because
Yeah.
I heard this term called phubbing, where you're phubbing someone, and it's when you have the phone in front of you and you basically just check out of the conversation and you're just looking at your phone. And so parents are phubbing their kids and they are not paying attention to them, and the kids feel like the phone is more important than them. And I mean, I'm guilty of it. Like the other day, my daughter was like, can you put that down? Because like every time I was like, if I picked up my phone, I'd be like, oh, I got this email. Oh, I got to respond to this. And then all of a sudden, my daughter just was like, hey, can you put this down? And I'm like, yes, you were correct. And then
Yeah.
like having like those periods of time, like even at dinner time, like sometimes my husband will have the phone out while, he just finished, but the kids are still eating. And so having certain rules around having the phone put away because then that starts creating that safe space. And yeah, like when you were talking about just that, that the home environment, because I also saw how there's like these kids that are called sort of the bedroom kids. Like they just want to stay in their bedrooms because they want to have this safe space, and the only place in their house is their bedrooms. So
Oh, and some of the kids that they take dinner into the bed. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, no, 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 no. We need to come out for meals. Um, and I tell parents because some of the responses to me about family dinner is that, hey, we all eat a little bit differently or different timings, this, that. And
yeah,
I said, I'm fine with that. But when the kids sit down,
Uh-huh.
whoever parent is around, I need you to sit down. You can have a glass of water. I don't mind. You know, it's not about the meat. It's not about you eating. It's about
Yeah.
you being present with the kiddos when they're sitting down to have a meal. And guys, it's like probably like 20 minutes. Like it's not
Yeah.
even a
Yeah.
super long time.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And then sometimes parents will say, okay, like, well, the child's not talking to me while I'm sitting there, but you do it enough times, then all of a sudden they realize, hey, my mom is here, or my dad is here, and they're going to be here every time I have dinner. I'm going to maybe ask that question that I've been waiting to ask for a while to them.
They can ask a question, a conversation about the weekend comes up. I'm like, oh, we're free on Saturday. Does anybody want to do something? You know, should we have somebody over? Do we want to go out? Or I also like to see what the conversation between the siblings, like, you know, sometimes the siblings are talking
Yeah,
amongst each other, and then they'll pull in the parent to be like, oh, yeah, mom, can you drive us to blah, blah, blah. Like, be present so that you can be
yeah,
pulled into the conversation, right? And you also, like, this is like the car too, you don't feel pressure, you don't have to like make conversation
yeah.
if it feels forced. Like that's also not comfortable for anybody.
Yes,
um
yes.
yeah.
And I love, yeah, and I love that whole what you just talked about, like having this sort of safe, stable, peaceful environment. Because again, kids are not going to ask questions where they think their parent is going to react a certain way, judge them about something. If imagine if I was like, "Hey, I want to go to school dance," my parents were like, "What? What dance? Focus on your academics." And I'm not going to ask that question. So also just right being aware, and I'm sure you've seen that with your teens. Like, are there things that they definitely don't want to talk to their parents about?
And so, and then I don't force certain topics, you know, because it's like um my 15, 16-year old, I'm like, oh, I think he might like somebody, but
Mhm.
I am not going to force this
Yes.
conversation.
Yeah.
I'm actually waiting for him to bring it up.
Yeah.
And, you know, and, but I, as a parent, I'm paying attention. I'm just kind of, my eyes are on it. And I'm like, okay. Um, I just want them to feel, I want the consistency of the household to be like, there's a dinner time, there's a meal here, you guys can rely on us. It's calm.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's like a happy, it's like a not a negative experience.
Yeah.
Um, that's really important. And I understand sometimes both parents can't make it, right? One parent's not home yet from work
Mhm.
or something. Just do our best effort, right? Our best effort in my house is dinners
Mhm.
between 6:30 and 7. Some meal is
Yeah.
happening and some parent is home. And we are going to sit at the table and there's no phones.
Yeah.
But then we have to model it too, right? Again, the
Right.
parents cannot be on our phones every minute. Every once in a while, I mean, because of my work, I will say, hey guys, I'm expecting a call that might be important, but
Mhm.
I'm naming it. I'm like
That's
saying,
great. Yeah.
this is something might be important. And because like other things are coming through the phone all the time that are not so
Mhm.
urgent, right? So I will name it, say, hey, something might be important. So I'm going to keep the ringer, I'm going to keep it on or near me. Um, but that's not all the time. So yeah.
Okay. So we are going to take a break. And when we come back, we want to talk more specifically about how to talk to our children about divorce. Welcome back. You're listening to Brownish Parenting with Dr. Amita on Ruckus Avenue Radio. We are now back with Simi Markar, licensed marriage and family therapist. And I would love to get some tips for parents who are going through a divorce. And so once you've made this decision to get divorced, I'm just wondering, is there a way to tell them? And how do families typically go about doing that?
Well, I do want to say we're seeing an increase in this in
Mhm.
divorce in the South Asian community. Um, so it is something that needs to be navigated, and it's a relatively new concept. So many of my families are struggling.
Uh-huh.
Many of my families that they come into counseling to get this kind of support. Actually,
Yeah.
we do a lot of divorce support in our practice. So they come to us to be like, I don't know how to do this or how to
Yeah.
navigate this. And so we talk about, I usually have both the parents in to talk about, um, you know, when we are going to sit down with the kids, I need us to sit down together and I need us to have kind of the messaging already kind of worked out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
Okay.
some prep work, you know, ahead of time. And,
Uh-huh.
and we're going to sit down together with the kids if we can. That's the best case scenario. Both parents are there. Um,
Okay.
and that we have a conversation to say, you know, we love you and we're always going to be your parents. Um,
Mm.
but as husband and wife, we've made the decision to live separately. And so that means we're going to be going through a divorce. It's and have some kind of timeline. Some
Yeah.
kids need information, right? When any of us are going through change, we need information. So as much information to be like, we think this is going to take 6 months, or it's like maybe by the end of the year, we're not sure. We're going to keep you guys updated. Um, who's going to live where? Is mom going to live here? Dad going to live here? I really tell parents to try to stay in the same school district.
Yeah.
So please don't be too far away, because that creates um, just more change for the children as far as the navigating, like going to this house that's a little bit farther,
Hmm.
because they still have to go to school. Their school is going to be their constant now. So that
Hmm.
also keeping that in mind. If we can also not make a change in school
Yeah.
at the same time. Um,
Yes.
and also that they're going to have lots of questions. Maybe some kids still have questions. Some kids are really quiet
Uh-huh.
because they're processing. Also pay attention to different age groups. So like you could have a 4-year-old that's maybe not even grasping what's going on quite yet, and you could have a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old
Hmm.
who might be like, oh yeah, I know what this means, and I know I'm more familiar with it. And also give everybody a lot of grace. This is new for everybody. Everybody going
Yeah.
through this is going through this for the first time. And get support. Like talk to a counselor, talk to someone to be like, okay, how do we, if you need help navigating, or even just talking about your own feelings about,
Yeah.
all the changes that are coming. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Going back to the messaging. So when you and I know your counseling group works with families together and then individually, so you get to kind of get that holistic perspective. And so when you see the couples, do you see them one-on-one? Do you see them together when they're thinking about that messaging and what they're going to say to their children?
So we've done both. So some couples are comfortable enough to come in together and say, hey, we want to kind of get our messaging together. And then some couples, the conflict is so high, or they're just so not really working well together, that
Yeah.
we are getting more progress when we do individual sessions
Hmm.
with them to say, hey, how can I best support you? What would be your outcome? What are your desired outcome here with the kids? And how do you want this to look? Right. We're looking for everyone getting on the same page with the vision. Like, how do we want this to look? Right.
Yeah.
Because everybody's household looks a little different with custody and how we do co-parenting. So I
Hmm.
need to kind of walk them through um, what this is going to look like, because I don't know. Some of my families haven't even thought it through. Like, what is
Yeah.
co-parenting going to look like?
Yeah.
There's a lot to discuss, and so some parents like to come together, and there's also the option to come separately if that's more comfortable.
Got it. And then obviously, like, I guess thinking about like the reason for why it's happening, because I know a lot of times some parents are a little too open with their children about, you know,
Yeah,
dad cheated on me or has a drinking problem, whatever it is. And then it impacts the relationship between the parent and that child and just creates a lot of just cognitive dissonance because you're like, I love both of my parents and now I don't know what to do and I'm kind of stuck in the middle of this.
yeah, and we don't want kids to have
Yeah.
to pick sides or have a loyalty issue, because that causes like depression, anxiety,
Mhm.
stress for them when they feel like, hey, I really love my dad, but my mom keeps saying he's a bad guy and he drinks and he does this and I don't want to villainize either parent. And
Yeah.
so we can basically say, mom and dad are not getting along. We tried,
Hmm.
we have different ideas of how to make decisions, just maybe more general. And the kids might push us. They might ask us, we're like, is it this? Is it that? I said, it's a lot of things. But we've decided that it's better if we're separated. If you have questions, you can ask dad yourself. I just don't want this to be like making the other parent look bad, because this poor kid has to go stay with that parent, has to still have a relationship with
Yeah.
that parent.
Yeah.
So you were doing them a disservice by bad mouthing your spouse, right? Like I want to caution against that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then I guess I've heard of some South Asian families that have told me that have thought about doing like a fun activity together after they tell them or before they tell them, just to make sure, like providing that consistency that we are still this family, we love you, and reinforcing it has nothing to do with the kids, because sometimes like the kids take it personally and think that they did something based on the age that they're at.
I think
have you
this is,
seen
yeah,
that
I
as
think
well?
this is
Yeah.
based on the family. It's like based on
Yeah.
the family dynamics,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Some families would be like, yeah, let's go for a hike together. Let's go for a
Mhm.
picnic. Let's go. And then we can spend time and we can answer more questions if you want. Um, yeah, some families that really works out. That's like, it's, you're creating that space together. And some
Yeah.
families are like, no, that the parents can't even be, it wouldn't go well. Like there's such high
That's
conflict or
true. Yeah.
just such a shutdown in communication that the
Mhm.
parents would be awkward and uncomfortable. And so I also like to ask the kids, I'm like, would you guys like to go do a picnic
Mhm.
with us? And
Mhm.
so it's also trying to give them some input. Um,
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, like you're saying, it's varied based on the situation, the circumstance, the
mhm,
conflict. If the person can
mhm,
stand the other person and being around them, all of
mhm.
that is going to play a role. For children, do you also recommend going through therapy individually as well? You see them as a family, but then what about just individually?
I think, yeah, I think if the kids are having difficulty, I don't think all kids need therapy to go
Hmm.
through a divorce in a divorcing situation. But
Yeah.
if they're starting to show difficulty, there's like sleep issues, they're like stressed out a lot,
Yeah.
they feel very uneasy, um, very emotional. Sometimes kids also just need a space to talk it through with someone who's not involved in
Yeah.
the situation because they're like, I don't want to hurt mom's feelings or dad's feelings or they
Hmm.
just come in here to our counseling office and then we are able to kind of chat with them about just school in general and just their lives and we're also another caring adult that can be like okay if you're struggling how can I help you what do you think about the divorce and just kind of giving them a space to share their thoughts and feelings so some kids really do benefit from the counseling because it's just they need a place to process.
Yeah, there's so much to process, and I've heard like that first year is typically the most stressful, the most emotions. And then based on the age range in my classes, when we talk about divorce, we see how the preschoolers might regress in their potty training and maybe they were pro-social, but they're showing more aggressive behavior. We talk about the school age children not being able to concentrate in school. And then the adolescents, just because they already have, their emotions are so strong that that becomes, again, a negative way of acting out and taking on more risks. So I think like what you were saying, or the ones that are really quiet, like, and they don't want to talk at all, but then maybe having this safe space allows for them to like voice what's going on internally, right?
Yeah, and I think you said the first year is the toughest, and I said I we've been seeing that because it's a big change in the two to go from one household to two households, and so the kids are now whatever arrangement there is, but there's usually a back and forth going on, and it's a lot to get used to, and so I want parents to also be able to take input from the kids to
Hmm.
say, hey, this Friday can I actually stay at so and so's house this parent's house because of this reason. Some flexibility goes a long way. And so I want parents to kind of keep that in mind because I find some of my parents are very rigid on this schedule and
Hmm.
it's not working out that great. The kids are feeling very like confined and they can't go to the parent and say, hey, can I stay at this parent's house this day or that day? The kids also need to have a voice here. This is lives there where they're living they have plans teenagers are also going to start to have their own plans we need to take that into account um, and support that because that's part of their development they should have some own social plans and things going on in their calendar um, so yeah so the flexibility part becomes a challenge for some of my families so we work on that in counseling to navigate.
Yeah, because flexibility and putting your child's needs first. I know Gwyneth Paltrow, when she was getting a divorce, she talked about this concept of like conscious uncoupling and just keeping the needs of the children, um, in the front of one's mind, like just really thinking about, okay, education concerns, health concerns, emotional well-being, which you were saying, like if they want to be at some friend's house and it's closer to mom or closer to dad, or they have a sleepover how do we do that? And that's going to lead to more positive outcomes than anything else than seeing the spouses fight, ex-spouses like fight with one another about where this child is going, like an object, right?
Yeah, it's a simple, an example comes to mind where a parent is going to pick up a child at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. And she asked, hey, can we push this to 10 or 10:30? Because I like to sleep in. And this became, I was trying to help this family. I'm like, it's not an unreasonable request.
Yeah.
And can we work with this? Right? She's
Mhm.
trying to express her needs. Unless we have to go somewhere, like really, it's fixed.
Yeah.
Could we be flexible here?
Yeah.
And then the child feels heard and
Mhm.
supported, and it's not this like, no, 9 a.m. and it has to be. And it just doesn't also help the relationship when we're so, when it feels forced and it
Yeah.
feels like we're not listening, taking an input. So some of my South Asian parents are really the flexibility part we really need to keep working on.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. And I can see that it will definitely take time to get there, especially after like maybe after the first year and emotions have kind of calmed down a little, like they've navigated that process. I'm hoping that you might see more, leeway there. But we're going to
Yeah.
go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to look at any other, themes, issues that you see emerging with South Asian families today? Welcome back to Brownish Parenting with Dr. Amita on Ruckus Avenue Radio. We are now going to just take a look at some of the challenges that parents have when they're co-parenting after a divorce. What are some things that you're seeing, Simi?
So I usually talk to the parents about making the children as comfortable as possible. So when you anticipate they're coming to your house, that the house again is calm and relaxed and also prepped, right? We have food stocked up for them. Like it's like a relatively picked up house. Like it feels like a warm, inviting place. Again, I really have to help some of my parents to make sure it's not chaotic. Um, because then the children don't feel comfortable, don't feel like safe, don't feel like spending a lot of time. If it's a very like messy or there's like no food or it's just not very organized. So
Yeah.
I really try to help parents. I say, hey, part in the very beginning with the co-parenting, try to be as stable, organized as possible so the kids feel um, that they can rely on us to kind of have things steady for them.
Yeah.
Um, so the other thing is that I also want to caution parents about asking too many questions about the other parent's home.
Mhm.
Hey, what is mom feeding you? What is dad feeding you? What are you doing? Are you having lots of sweets or like who's coming over there? I know this person's coming over to your mom's house a lot. I don't want the kids to have to report on the other parent. That becomes very uncomfortable. And it's really not their job. And it's really, we need to keep some boundaries here.
Mhm.
So some of my parents, this becomes a challenge because it's just, they forget that they're not supposed to be asking or should be kind of focused more on their own home. Um, there are some challenges when the parents start dating, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a whole nother thing
Mhm.
to navigate because some parents make an agreement amongst themselves to not introduce a new partner 6 months, 12 months
Yeah.
before it's more serious. And some parents never discussed it. And so new partners are being introduced and that's causing some disruption to the system. And so that's also something in co-parenting with the counselor. We try to come up with some ground rules of like, hey guys, how do we want to
Great
navigate
point. Yeah, that's a great point. I was
the
just thinking through
dating?
that. Like, what is the
Yeah,
next step? Because you're talking about the messaging of how to tell kids about a divorce, but then what is the messaging when you start a new relationship with someone else? Yeah.
yeah. And introducing the kids or keeping that to the timing when the kids are maybe not with you. And but then so I have some parents that are doing well at that. They're meeting people when the children are not with them.
Hmm.
But when the children come back, there's this whole texting, phone, it's like you're in a new relationship. So there's all this energy around connecting with this new person. And the children are starting to pick up on like, hey,
Yes. Yes.
mom's acting a little different.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's that. So the navigating dating, which is again new for in the co-parenting relationship. Also, another challenge we found is that when the children are with, let's say, one parent, they're at dad's, and they want to call mom.
Yeah.
Some of my parents are having a hard time with
Yeah.
allowing the communication with the other parent. And I said, what is the problem? Like I'm always trying to explore like what's the
Yeah.
issue? Is it the frequency? Is it, feels like too much?
You feel like it's the
Thinking,
insecurity about their
yeah,
relationship with their child, and then why are you always going to the other parent?
yeah. They're always calling mom. And I said, the 7-year-old wants to check in with mom. Like
Yeah.
and it's okay. And then actually, and I say to dad, I say, actually, then when the call's over,
Yeah.
try to do something with the child. The child's with you. Like go do something or go have an outing or go, try to plan something that the child can engage in. And not be so worried about the phone call. So this one, it keeps coming up. This one keeps coming up. So we have to kind of keep reminding parents,
Yeah.
hey, it's okay if the child wants to touch base. And we don't want the child to feel bad
Yeah.
about wanting to touch base with the other parent.
Yeah.
That causes stress and anxiety in our kids that we don't want. So those are kind of the main ones that we're
Okay.
seeing co-parenting.
Yeah.
Actually, I could add one more. So also just coordination of needs. So let's suppose like they have to go to a soccer game or they need to go. I have one client right now needs to go to fifth grade science camp, and the parents need to be able to communicate. Hey, did you get the sleeping bag? Did you get the thing? Did you get the list?
Long
And
list. It's a long list.
it's a long list, and I don't want the child to be the one to say responsible for the list, right? It's like the parents need to be able to communicate back and forth, and some of my parents in the divorce situation are having a hard time communicating, and I said that's going to again hurt the child because it's putting more responsibility on her. um, that's not for her to manage, right? That's
Mhm.
for the parent. The adults need to manage this. Like she needs to go to soccer. Who has the cleats? Like, can we guys? We need to communicate. Some people are doing fine with texting. Some people are doing fine with email. Some people do fine with calls. So that's another thing is figuring out what's our best mode of communication
Yeah.
between the parents in co-parenting because this one gets messy also where parents they're not on the same page. One wants please text me and the other one's like please call me.
That can
And
get
then
so
the therapist,
frustrating for the child to feel
oh,
like they're in the middle of this and it's because of them that their parents are going back and forth and fighting about the camp list or the cleats and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, what
just
you're
and then it feels overwhelming and stressful and then the child's like telling me like I don't really want to go to camp anymore and I said no, that's not what we want.
That's so sad. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm so glad you're working with families and helping them through this and providing them with that perspective that they may not even because they're in their heads with their own emotions. I'm going back and forth with this other parent. They may not see their child's perspective of, hey, I don't even want to go to camp
Right,
anymore. And
right,
then
because this situation is becoming so difficult. I just don't want I'm like losing interest in the activity.
are there any other issues that you're seeing with South Asian families today that don't have to do with divorce? I know you work with families in different capacities. So
We're seeing an uptick in depression and anxiety coming
mhm,
out of COVID, and I thought it was going to drop,
yeah.
but actually it's kind of either sustained or it's kind of picked up a little bit. And I think some of what's happened, and I've been talking to other therapist colleagues about this, is that there's been a basically a COVID deficit. So in COVID, many of our kids didn't socially or academically develop at the pace that they were supposed to. And so now we put them back in school as a ninth grader, 10th grader. They're a little bit underdeveloped for because
Yeah.
COVID, right? The inputs that they got in COVID from at home learning is not
Uh-huh.
the same.
And there
And
was a big
so,
divide too, right? Like there's some kids that actually had these COVID like circle, social bubbles and circles, and then some that were just super isolated and didn't see any kids. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's been, we've been seeing that, and that's maybe something to pay attention to, is that because they're back in school and all the challenges of just demands of everyday schooling, and it's pretty demanding in the Bay Area. Our
Mhm.
high schools are pretty demanding, and so um some of our kids are struggling because they're like,
Yeah.
so there we're seeing some anxiety, some depression, and the parents are maybe scratching their heads. They're like, we're back to normal. Like, what's the deal? Like, what's the
Mhm.
problem? So some kids are struggling. So that's where they're finding therapists to come in and say, hey, we want to kind of just get some added support around that. And
Yeah.
that's been helpful for many of my families, is to just have a space to just even name it, to be like, why am I struggling so much, or why is this so hard? And then again, we have the same anxiety around college, getting into college. Like, that is
Mhm.
an ongoing issue. Um, a lot of parents are stressed out about that. A lot of the kids are struggling with, like, what if I don't make it to a UC? It's so
Mhm.
difficult to get in these days. Um, so that's an ongoing academic stress that we're
Yeah.
seeing in the
Especially in the
practice.
Bay Area, especially
Yeah,
here, right?
right.
Yes. All
Mhm.
right. Thank you so much. We're going to take a break. I first just want to thank, Simi for being here with us and all of her expertise. We learned a lot about the divorce process, the messaging, the way in which we want to make sure children know that they are loved and that the parents are working together as a team in this post-divorce co-parenting relationship. We also thought through some of the challenges that come forward when children feel like they're put in the middle, but also just navigating like two households and what that's like building in that flexibility. So parents are really thinking about, what does my child want? What does my child need? And responding to that. So we have just learned so much from you, Simi. And I wanted to just ask you if you had any other final thoughts, and then to let people know where they can find you if they want to connect with you.
So my main passion is to have strong families, strong, healthy families. And I want to support families in whatever way that I can. Some of it is like very young, new parents that they're adjusting to just even having kids. And some of we're working with teenagers and in co-parenting. So at any stage of life, any developmental stage, we are here to support. Our practice is located in Fremont, and we also have another office in San Jose. And so we have people coming in and calling us all the time. We do our best to provide the support needed. If we can't, if we're not the right match, then we're working really hard to find you the right match in the Bay Area. And we do in person and virtual appointments, and we can be found online through our best way to find us is through our website, which is mindsetcounselinggroup.com. And so, please send us a message. You have any questions, you can email me directly. My email is on the website. And I'm always happy to support.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So next week, we're going to be talking to Minal Doshi. She is a social worker at PAMP, and she will be talking about best parenting practices, parenting styles, and child outcomes. So stay tuned.